Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
There's no reason to get mad about taxes. Stay tuned and I'll show you how to keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with offices in Louisville and Bowling Green. Your host, five-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Well, I love that clip from the movie Network. Very famous scene there. And since this is a G-rated show, we left off the rest of that scene. You probably knew where he was going with that. Also, I love the part about him not asking us to write our congressman because he wouldn't even know what to tell you to write. Boy, amen to that, brother. But what I'm going to do on today's show is give you something you can do right now about the taxes that are buried inside your 401k or IRA. Now, there is a tax law that our friendly folks in Washington put in place years ago that really didn't make a lot of sense, but now with the new tax law changes, folks, this could be a huge game changer and a way for you possibly to save a bundle in taxes on your retirement accounts. Well, welcome to the Worry-Free Retirement. I am that little man in the sweater vest, all-around good guy and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today we begin a 4-part series, brand new, on taxes in your retirement and what you could do to reduce them. You know, just the mention of taxes really does make people mad. One of the maddest I see people sometimes is as we really get into talking about their 401k, and I have to let them know, unbeknownst to many of these people, that they have a tax tumor buried within their 401k, and there's going to be a big price to pay. But you know what? Let's face it, as long as man has walked the face of the earth, as long as someone has ever been able to rule or govern over people, taxes, really the collection of somebody else's money that goes to governmental agencies, has been around forever. And when you think about it, on the surface, any government must have revenue in order to operate. And since government is there, hopefully, working in our best interest, they have to create tax laws to govern what happens with those taxes they collect on us. Actually, it's very logical and it makes sense on the surface. Speaking of politicians spending out a lot of money, it's funny how you and I talk in terms of saving thousands of dollars. You know, hopefully we can save you a lot of money. Apparently there's a story of 2 politicians in Washington talking about the billions of dollars they're going to be spending. And the one politician says to the other, how much money is that? And he says, well, I don't know, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon, I guess it's a lot of money. But it does add up to a lot of money, folks, and it's up to you to try to do something about these taxes. Now, you hear celebrities, politicians, wealthy people talk about everybody else needs to pay more in taxes, but the last time I checked, nobody is paying more in taxes than the law requires. This was the famous Judge Learned Hand even said that. He basically said, we are not required to pay more in taxes than the law requires us to pay. But not only is this human nature not to want to pay the government more than our fair share, but it just makes sense. Here's the deal. We work hard. We save our money. We invest it. We put it in our 401ks or whatever, and then we end up handing all of this money back over to the government, and then they spend billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars. So just like the scene in the movie Network, let's not get mad. Let's attack this problem and let me share some solutions for you over the next 4 weeks as we dive into how to save taxes on your retirement. Rather than, there's a thing too, folks, rather than necessarily complaining about taxes, I'm going to say something that's going to make you feel kind of funny about this. I'm going to say, why don't we rejoice in the fact that we can afford taxes? Did you realize right now the federal taxes, the tax brackets, are the lowest they've been in terms of overall income in years? See, we should be rejoicing, folks. In fact, I've been in this business since 1984. I've never seen them this low. Many people say, well, I don't know, Tony, they seem pretty high to me. Really? You want to go back to World War II, post-World War II? Listen to this. For those earning more than $200,000 after World War II, their top tax rate peaked at 94%. In other words, any money you made over $200,000, you only brought home 6 cents of every dollar you made. The government took 94 cents. Now, following up with World War II, we fast forward into the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Taxes weren't much better then. They were up in the 70% range. You know, it's been said of all these taxes that the former President Ronald Reagan, when he was in his acting career, during these tax rate years that were so high, Mr. Reagan only agreed to work on 2 films a year, for he knew if he made more than 2 films per year, he was going to make a ton more money and the government was going to make a ton of it. Talk about disincentivizing people to work. So today, as we record this show on January 22nd, 2019, let me repeat, we are in the lowest tax rates we've been in for years. In fact, the highest marginal rate is only 37%, and many of you watching this show, if you play your cards right, are only going to pay taxes at a 12% rate. Compare that to 70%. Come on now, folks. This is a great opportunity to take advantage of laws that, in my opinion, may not be around much longer. So the government is spending like crazy. The deficit is mounting. Social Security, Medicare concerns are on the horizon. So I've got a question for you. If we had to ask this question, do you think in the future taxes will be lower or higher? Think about that a minute. Well, obviously, if they're the lowest they've ever been and the government's in a free fall right now in terms of revenue and taxes, my guess is, my supposition is, they're going to be much higher one day. So you don't plan for taxes 20 or 30 years from now, folks. You have to plan for them now. Now, basically, the tax laws are complicated. I get that. We've been working with these for years. Keep in mind, let me say this. We are not income tax preparers. So we don't take your tax return and do income tax preparation. We do tax planning. And there's a huge difference between this. So what I'm going to do, when I come back in the next segment, I'm going to make sure you understand the 4 different types of taxation, because what we're going to do over the next 4 weeks, we're going to take a deep dive into each form of taxation and show how you can keep more money in your pocket. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'll be right back.
Due to significant changes in the tax laws, taxes are now on sale. If you are over the age of 55 and have over $100,000 in retirement assets, now is the time to take advantage of this huge opportunity to attend Tony Walker's free presentation, Tax-Free Retirement, Tuesday, February 19th, right here in Louisville. Taxes may never be this low again, and seating is limited for this presentation, so register now at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for recently moved or been acquired or closed its doors forever? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k to safer territory. Why continue to risk your hard-earned money when you don't have to? Let's meet in person today to discuss your retirement options. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your no-obligation appointment to meet with me in person. Do it today.
Welcome back, and we are now talking about the 4 types of taxation that the government imposes on our money. A lot of people are very familiar now. I guess there's been so much hype over it that, yeah, okay, eventually when you take money out of a 401k, there could be some taxes. More than likely, if you can fog a mirror in any kind of tax bracket, you're going to pay taxes on that money. We call that the tax tumor, and I'm going to go into that in great detail next week in show number 2. But let's talk about the 4 types of taxation, and let's cover the first type of taxation in just a second, but let's go through all 4. The first type of taxation we have is money that is considered after-tax taxable. After-tax taxable. The second type of money, again, this would be a 401k, would be pre-tax tax deferred. The third type of taxation is after-tax tax deferred. And finally, the fourth type, my favorite, is after-tax tax-free. So many times when people are meeting with me, especially on an appointment to do a retirement plan, Most people have no clue of these 4 types of taxation. They just assume, well, I got to pay some taxes when I take out of my 401k. I don't know what it is, but is taxes really a big deal? It's a huge deal, because what's happened over the years, in my 34 years, what I found is, I developed this graph years ago, I was trying to impart to people that you might be diversified with your investments, but most people are not diversified with their taxes. So what happens when you get into retirement, because you haven't pre-diversified your tax planning, we don't have any options. We're going to show you that in the next segment, but basically, if you use an example where you got all these taxes happening over the years, and you finally realize this in your age 70, the amount of taxes you've paid or will pay is an enormous cost to not only you, but the amount of money you're going to be able to pass, because basically the government has been taking that money all those years and using it. So let's kind of dive in and go back to this graphic and look at the types of assets in each of the 4 categories, all right? So the first one, after-tax taxable. Now, my best example of that would be a CD. So you run out, you make good money, you make $50,000 or whatever, you got an extra $5,000, and you run down to the bank and you put it in a 2% CD. They invest it. That's what's called a non-qualified account. It's not qualified for any tax advantages. You get 2% of $5,000, whatever that is, $100. You don't think much about it. You reinvest those dividends. Remember that in the next segment. You reinvest that interest or dividends. So all of a sudden at the end of the year, you get a 1099. You go, what's this? It's $100. That means the 2% on the $5,000 created a $100 income, although you didn't see it. You left it there at the bank. And then you had to pay taxes on that. So there's an example. Another huge example that most people miss is mutual funds. A lot of people talk about mutual funds, and yeah, they're good investments, but what people don't realize, they are totally tax inefficient, especially if held in what we call a non-qualified account. That's because these mutual funds have to pay out dividends and capital gains even if you don't have the money, even if there's a loss. So you're going to notice this year. Some of you had losses on your mutual funds in 2018 because of the downturn in the market. If it was a non-qualified account, you're actually going to get whammy, though, because they're probably going to still send you a 1099 for gains. I know it's crazy, but it works that way. All right, let's kind of move over an example of pre-tax. Again, we'll be covering these over the next 4 weeks in detail, so hang in there, folks. Pre-tax tax deferred, an example would be a 401k, an IRA, a 403b. In a sense, real estate, because real estate in most cases is deductible as far as its depreciation and interest. And again, with real estate, other than the rents, the capital gains are tax deferred. So some good assets there, that would be pre-tax tax deferred. Now let's slide over to after-tax tax deferred. This confuses people a little bit. Another example, you got $5,000, $10,000, you've already paid taxes, and let's say you want to buy an annuity, a fixed indexed annuity through us even. I love these products, and you say, well, Tony, I've already paid taxes. Now, unlike the CD, I can say, well, that's great because this will grow tax deferred. In other words, as that annuity grows each year, you're not going to get a 1099. Now, there's a problem with that, though. Those taxes are deferred. They have not been dealt with. So, this is what a lot of people don't want to tell you. The problem with the annuity is one day when you take the money out, any gain on that annuity will be taxed. Or when you die, any gain is taxed at ordinary income rates to your family. So yeah, while we love tax-deferred annuities and they're great and all that good stuff, unfortunately there are ordinary income taxes. Now let's go back real quick to real estate. Real estate has favorable taxes. This is why I don't think real estate should be put inside an IRA and taxed at ordinary income. I'd rather leave the real estate outside of an IRA because it has capital gains taxes. You can also get a step up in basis at death and be totally tax-free. So I'm not going to go into detail here. We'll cover this in week 3, but there's an example of tax deferred. And then finally, after tax, tax-free. Again, this will be in week 4. I love this. I mean, this is what we've really been dealing with today and in our monologue. Why in the world wouldn't you want to get the taxes out of the way? It's a pay me now or pay me later, folks. They're going to eventually get your taxes. So the logic being, assuming we're in one of the lowest tax brackets we've ever been in years, why wouldn't you want to get the tax out of the way so that in the future, this money is not only tax-free forever to you, but tax-free forever to your children? An example of that would be a Roth IRA, a Roth conversion, and then one of my favorites, of course, is life insurance. So those are the 4 types of taxations on your money. Now, when we come back, I'm going to go a deep dive here. We're going to dive into what is an example, Tony, of after-tax taxable, and possibly Is there any way we could make this account that's sitting over there generating all these 1099s, could we turbocharge that and somehow flatten the tax? You bet. I'm going to get the whiteboard out. I'll be right back. It only happens one time, and just 140 people can attend. I'm Tony Walker, inviting you to a free screening of the breakthrough documentary, The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, Tuesday, March 5th in Louisville. This shocking film reveals why you could be paying far more in taxes in retirement and how you can defend yourself. If you've saved at least $250,000 for retirement, call to reserve your free ticket at 877-499-9255.
Tired of the financial world chasing after your money? Dinner seminar invitations? Annoying pop-up ads on your computer from out-of-state advisors? It all adds up to confusion. There is a better way. Meet in person with nationally recognized retirement specialist Tony Walker. Tony's personal one-on-one approach has helped thousands of savers worry less about money, and best of all, Tony's right in our own backyard. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Make the short drive to meet in person with Tony now. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Well, we've been covering the 4 types of taxation that the government imposes on our money. As we've said, most people are pretty familiar with the tax-deferred nature of a 401k, and one day you have to pay some taxes, although most people have no clue what that's going to be. But most people don't realize that the taxes imposed by the government fall differently depending on different assets. And as we've been talking about, most people have no plan to diversify their taxes. You can't wait, folks, until 75 to start doing tax planning. Now's the time to do it. And this first one is a great example. So let's review very briefly the 4 types of taxation one more time. There is after-tax taxable. This is the one we'll be talking about today. There is pre-tax tax deferred. That's number 2. Number 3 is after-tax tax deferred. And then finally, you have after-tax tax-free. So most people don't realize what's going on their tax return. By the time you watch this particular program, you may have already received some of these 1099s I'm going to be talking about. And yes, those have to be given to your tax preparer because the government wants their fair share. So where do these things come from? And how come you're getting 1099s? Well, this would be an example of what we call the after-tax taxable account. Now, I'm just picking for the heck of it. We could use all kinds of examples. But in this example, we're imagining we have a certificate of deposit, or a CD. And again, it doesn't matter. This is all conceptual, folks. We're imagining that that CD is currently paying 2% interest. Now remember, we're assuming you've already paid taxes on this money, you've run down to the bank and invested it, and this interest is now being paid. And in most cases, this is where people make a mistake, most people let the bank keep the interest because of the power of compounding, all right? But anyway, let's assume here that you have taxes. You're in some sort of tax bracket. Just so I can do the math here in a minute, I'm going to use 20% just so we can do the math. So remember, you're in a 20% tax bracket. This is what most advisors have no clue on. They don't really understand the concept. It's a macroeconomic concept called LOC, or lost opportunity cost. In previous shows we've covered this. Every time you have a cost, folks, basic economics, you lose the dollar, but you also lose the interest on this forever, on that dollar. So watch closely here, okay? Then finally, we have our ending value. So let's use this example and see how this is going to play out. So you've got your $100,000 CD. Again, you've told the bank to let that interest roll back in. So you've got $2,000 of interest. That's great. For savers who watch this show, obviously this show is for savers. I've got some money in CDs. This is good. You get 2% interest. The money's protected. What's wrong with that for a saver, right? Well, the problem is, remember, we're in a 20% tax rate. I'll write up here 1099. You get this 1099, all right, for $2,000, and because you're in a 20% tax rate, you owe $400 in taxes. Now, you might be saying, Tony, I didn't owe any money last year. I got a refund on my taxes, Hoss. Well, yeah, that may be the case, but I guarantee you there was taxes on that. You may have just overpaid on taxes. So it doesn't mean you didn't actually have taxes, all right? So what is LOC? Where does that come into play? Well, LOC, if you read the books on lost opportunity costs, generally what most people do is recommend if you have a cost, remember that $400 is gone forever, that you put an interest factor on top of that cost, usually your best investment. So we might say, well, Tony, I guess my best investment is 5%, so 5%, 400. Really, you've got another $200 cost. And you say, Tony, I don't see this. Where are you going with this? It's there, folks. You'll see this. Now, here's the problem, though. Because you left this money with the bank, the $102,000 is still at the bank. So it feels like you've made all this money, and you have. You've made $2,000. That's what we call your internal rate of return. So you're all excited. You and Martha, you got $102,000. We repeat this process. You get another $200,000 plus a little extra change, right? Because you've got more money, feels better, more interest. Well, what happens? The taxes actually go up. See what's happening here? Because there's more interest, they go up. Your LOC goes up, but you still have now 104 and whatever that is, and some change in the bank. So what we would suggest doing is turbocharging this. Why can't we maybe flatten? We can, by the way, I know how to do this. Why can't we just flatten this tax and put more money in your pocket or your family's pocket tax-free? So how are we going to do this? Well, the only way we can sit down to see if something like this would be helpful in your situation is go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. I will be happy to meet with you in person and see if this particular strategy can save you taxes and put more tax-free money in your pocket. Well, when we come back, we're going to be talking about taxes, but from a biblical perspective. Now, I don't know if you've read the Bible much, but you know what? Even in biblical days, those people had to pay taxes. And did they get mad over taxes just like you and I? Yeah, they did. But you know what? God has got some very, very encouraging words about these taxes. I think this is going to be a very special episode. You stay tuned. I'll be right back. I got to get me a cup of coffee.
Due to significant changes in the tax laws, taxes are now on sale. If you are over the age of 55 and have over $100,000 in retirement assets, now is the time to take advantage of this huge opportunity to attend Tony Walker's free presentation, Tax-Free Retirement, Tuesday, February 19th, right here in Louisville. Taxes may never be this low again, and seating is limited for this presentation, so register now at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
What if there was a financial product that could guarantee an income you could never outlive? A product that is not at risk in the stock market? Well, there is, and it's called an annuity. And for the past 34 years, I've personally helped thousands of savers secure over $300 million of annuities. So why risk your hard-earned money when you don't have to? Let's meet in person to see if an annuity is right for you. Log on today to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the WorryFree Retirement with the money missionary himself, Tony Walker.
All right, again, as we've said, folks, there's no reason to get mad about taxes. We've got the answers for you. Interestingly, does the Bible have anything to say about taxes and our reaction to having to pay them? And more importantly, does it say anything about our reaction to the government for being able to take all this money from us? Should we, as law-abiding citizens, be honored? Should we rejoice in paying taxes? And finally, most importantly, should those of us who count ourselves followers of Christ be upset that the government charges taxes? Well, let's first dive into a little history here. And as long as man has ruled over man, we've talked about this, but there has to be a system in place where a governing body takes taxes in order for the betterment of the people. It's called taxes. Now, some might argue and say, well, I think that's confiscation, Tony, but taxes does sound a little nicer. You know, in biblical days, they had to pay taxes, and then just as now, people got mad about paying taxes. In fact, the worst occupation you could have back then was a tax gatherer. Anyway, the Apostle Paul knew this, and he was concerned that all this tax and anger over taxes and handing over boatloads of money to the government was robbing Christians of the joy they possessed now that they were in Christ. Turn to Romans 13:1. Let's go over there, Aaron. Really interesting scripture where Paul reminds them, be in subjection to governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Now think about that for a minute. Yes, even those who pass tax laws and take away our money are there because God has allowed them to be there. No matter how honorable a person in authority might be or how crooked they might be, they are in subjection to the laws as well. Now let's go over to verse 2. This is interesting. So he says, why resist authority? We don't want to resist authority because if you resist authority, what Paul says, you're resisting God. Verse 6, because we do not want to resist God by resisting paying taxes, we pay the taxes. It's that simple, folks. Now the Jewish people of the day, they hated taxes just as much. And Jesus commented on this. Let's go over to Mark 12:14. They were trying to trick Jesus. They didn't want to pay these taxes. They said, hey, Jesus, is it lawful to pay a poll tax to Caesar or not? Now Jesus, and only the way Jesus could respond, asked him to get out a denarius and said, whose inscription is on there? And they said, well, Caesar's. And Jesus said, well, give to Caesar's what's Caesar's. You know, I truly believe the following. God could care less about all this money and this stuff, and while certainly we trust that we'll be good stewards of this money, He really wants no part of it. Look at the latter part of 17, where Jesus says, render to God the things that are God's. Now, my belief is that while God certainly is in control of people, places, and events of this world, He is happy to put us in charge of them. That's why whatever governing bodies we have, we are to be in subjection to them. Well, how about you? You may be sitting there saying, well, Tony, that's all well and good, and maybe you got me feeling a little better about this whole tax thing, but let's get back to how I can save on taxes. I want to feel like I'm in charge of my finances, and I want to take advantage of these low tax rates. How in the world am I going to do this? That's the best part, folks. All we got to do is talk. I'm experienced in this area. I've been doing this 34 years, and I would love the opportunity to see if we can help you save on taxes. Now, if you need to meet in person, we can do that. We have 2 offices in Bowling Green or Louisville, Kentucky. Or if you just want to have a chat over the phone to see what we're actually going to try to do for you, find out a little bit about your situation first, just give us a call or log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. And once there, just click on that Let's Get Started button. All the information is confidentially sent to our offices. You will be contacted. Now, keep in mind, folks, we will send you a starter kit. This is happening more and more. I don't think we're being clear on this. You do have to complete the starter kit. This is confidential. You have to bring the starter kit in to see me. We'd like to see your last year's most recent tax return because it's going to be hard to analyze taxes without seeing a tax return. It'd be like a doctor saying, don't let a doctor do an x-ray so he can see what's going on. We have to look at that. So you'll bring that along with your tax return and any other documents to our offices for a personal appointment. Now that first appointment only lasts about 30 minutes. We'll gather all the information and then we'll have a second appointment. Here's the best part, absolutely free. I'll share my free assessment with you on everything from retirement planning to tax planning. So why don't you take advantage of that? Again, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call us at 877-499-WALK. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's program. We've enjoyed being with you. Next week, keep in mind now, we'll be talking about the second type of taxation. This is going to be a humdinger. If you've got a 401k IRA, thrift savings account, 403b, lump sum pension, and you think you own 100% of that money, you are dead wrong, and I'm going to show you how to attack that tax tumor next week. But between now and then, you remember, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.